The child was dying, and no one saw. Mia Chen knelt beside the old stone bench, her small fingers trembling as she pulled back the corner of a faded blanket. Beneath it lay a baby boy, no more than 3 weeks old. His skin had turned a worrying shade of bluish purple. His tiny chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate gasps. The 5-year-old girl looked around the park with wide-eyed, frightened eyes. Families were packing up their picnic baskets. Joggers passed by with earbuds blocking out the world. A couple argued quietly near the fountain. The sounds of the city hummed in the distance. Cars honking. A siren wailing somewhere far away. The rustle of autumn leaves across the walking path. No one stopped. No one looked. No one heard the weak cry coming from the wicker basket. Mia's breath clouded in the cold November air. She wrapped her thin jacket tighter around herself, though it did little against the biting wind. The sleeves were too short. They had been too short since last winter. Her wrists were pink from the cold. She reached into the basket with both hands and lifted the blanket higher, trying to trap what little warmth remained around the baby's fragile body. But her hands were too small, too cold themselves. She could feel the baby shaking beneath her palms. This was not right. Even at 5 years old, Mia knew that much. Babies should not be alone in parks. They should not be cold. They should not make that terrible fading sound, like they were giving up. Her mother had taught her something important. When people need help, you help them. It did not matter if you were small. It did not matter if you were scared. You helped. Mia stood up, her legs felt shaky. She scanned the park again, searching for someone who looked like they might listen. Someone who would not walk past like all the others. That was when she saw him. A tall man in a charcoal coat walked briskly along the path. His shoulders were squared. His jaw was tight. He spoke into his phone with the clipped, impatient tone of someone who had more important places to be. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. They clicked against the concrete with the rhythm of power and certainty. Mia did not know him, but she recognized the type. Her mother had pointed them out before. The ones who never looked down. The ones who lived in towers made of glass. Still, she had to try him. She took a deep breath, her heart hammered in her small chest. Then she ran across the grass, her worn sneakers slapping against the ground. She reached out and grabbed the sleeve of his expensive coat. The words tumbled out in a rush. "Please, sir." He is shaking and no one came back for him. Marcus Sterling had been 5 years old the last time someone left him on this bench. It was late. The park was empty. His mother had told him to sit right here and wait. She would be right back. Just a few minutes. She promised. He sat. He waited. The sun went down. The streetlights came on. His stomach hurt. He was cold. He was scared. She never came back. That was how the story of Marcus Sterling began. On a stone bench in Riverside Park. Alone. Forgotten. A child no one wanted. 2 years in foster care followed. Dark years. Years he had trained himself not to remember. Then came the Sterlings, Richard and Margaret Sterling. Wealthy, childless. Cold as marble statues, but respectable. They gave him their name. They gave him private schools. They gave him every material advantage. What they did not give him was warmth. Margaret Sterling had rules. Rule number 1, emotion is weakness. Rule number 2, success is everything. Rule number 3, never look back at where you came from. Marcus learned those rules well. He learned them so well that by the time he was 42, he had built an empire worth $2 billion. Sterling Properties, 47 commercial buildings across the eastern seaboard. Shopping centers, office towers, apartment complexes, all of it controlled by one man who had started with nothing. He had everything. Money, power, respect. The kind of success that made people lower their voices when he entered a room. He also had nothing. No family, no real friends, no one waiting for him when he came home to his penthouse apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Every Friday evening, Marcus returned to Riverside Park. It was a ritual he could not explain. Not to himself, not to anyone. He walked the same path. He looked at the same bench. He stood there for exactly 10 minutes. Then he left. Some might call it closure. Marcus called it a reminder. A reminder never to be weak, never to need anyone, never to end up abandoned again. This particular Friday evening was colder than usual. The wind cut through his coat. His phone buzzed with messages. The CFO wanted to talk about third quarter profits. The board wanted to discuss cost-cutting measures. Shareholders were getting nervous about a 2% dip in stock value. Marcus answered the call as he walked. His voice was steady, controlled. The voice of a man who had mastered every situation. I understand your concerns. We will address the labor costs in Monday's meeting. Yes, 15% reduction is achievable. He ended the call, slipped the phone back into his pocket, stood before the bench where his life had changed 37 years ago. The park had changed. New playground equipment, repaved paths, fresh paint on the pavilion, but the bench remained, weathered, solid, a monument to abandonment. Marcus stared at it. He felt nothing. That was good. Feeling nothing meant he had won. He had survived. He had conquered the weakness that destroyed lesser men. He turned to leave. That was when the small hand grabbed his coat. Marcus Sterling stopped mid-stride, not because he wanted to, but because something small and desperate had latched onto his sleeve with surprising strength. He looked down. Irritation flickered across his face. A child. A girl. Maybe 5 years old. Her jacket was too thin for the weather. Her eyes were too wide with fear. He pulled his arm gently, trying to free himself without being rude. I cannot help you right now. Go find your mother. But the girl did not let go. Her fingers tightened. Her voice came out in a breathless rush. Please. He is shaking. No one came back for him. Marcus followed her gaze toward the bench. His bench. The place where his childhood ended. There was a basket there now. Old wicker, faded blanket draped over the top. And beneath that blanket, the unmistakable sound of a baby crying. Not the healthy wail of an infant demanding attention. This was different, weaker. The sound of a child running out of energy to stay alive. Marcus felt something cold slide down his spine. Something he had not felt in decades. Recognition. The girl tugged again. Her voice cracked. Please. He is so cold. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, Marcus saw himself, 5 years old, sitting on that bench, shaking from cold and fear and confusion, waiting for someone who never returned. He blinked the image away. That was a lifetime ago. That was a different person. He was Marcus Sterling now, CEO billionaire, a man who did not get involved in other people's problems. But his feet were already moving. He walked to the bench. The girl followed close behind him. Marcus knelt down, pulled back the blanket. The baby was tiny, fragile. His skin had that terrible bluish tint that meant hypothermia. His breathing was shallow and irregular. His little hands twitched beneath the thin blanket, searching for warmth that was not there. Marcus felt his throat tighten. His carefully constructed walls began to crack. This was not his problem. This was not his responsibility. He should call the authorities and leave. Let the system handle it. That was the logical thing to do, the smart thing. But logic and intelligence had nothing to do with what happened next. Marcus pulled out his phone, dialed 911, gave them the location, told them it was urgent, life or death. The girl stood beside him. She did not cry. She did not panic. She just watched the baby with an intensity that seemed far too old for her small face. Help is coming, Marcus said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. The girl looked up at him. Really? Really? Then she did something that broke through the last of Marcus's defenses. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were ice cold, but she held on tight. Thank you, she whispered. I did not know what to do. Marcus looked at her, this brave, scared, impossibly courageous little girl who had done what dozens of adults had failed to do. She had stopped. She had seen. She had cared. You did exactly the right thing, Marcus heard himself say. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Getting closer, Marcus started to stand. He had done his duty, called for help. That was enough. He could leave now, go back to his penthouse, his spreadsheets, his carefully ordered life. But the girl was still holding his hand. Will you stay, she asked, until they come? Marcus hesitated. Every instinct told him to walk away. Do not get involved. Do not open yourself to complications. Do not let anyone past your walls. Then he looked at the baby, at the bench, at the ghost of a 5-year-old boy who had waited alone in the dark. I will stay, he said. The ambulance arrived with flashing lights and urgent voices. Paramedics rushed to the bench with equipment and practiced efficiency. One of them, a woman in her 30s, knelt beside the basket and began her assessment. Severe hypothermia, respiratory distress. We need to move fast. The small crowd that had been ignoring the situation suddenly materialized with questions and opinions. People who had walked past without stopping now gathered to watch, to whisper, to judge. A police officer arrived, tall, stern-faced, the kind of man whose expression had not softened in years. His eyes swept the scene and landed on the little girl. "Where are your parents, young lady?" Mia swallowed hard. She looked up at him with those wide, frightened eyes. "I just found him. I did not do anything." The officer's frown deepened. He pulled out his notepad. "Who was here when you arrived? Did you see anyone leave the basket?" "I do not know. I was playing and I heard him crying." From the edge of the crowd, a woman's voice cut through, sharp, judgmental. Jennifer Walsh, designer clothes, expensive sunglasses pushed up on her head. The kind of woman who volunteered at charity events but crossed the street to avoid homeless people. That little girl was the only one near him. Who knows what she did? Mia flinched like she had been slapped. Her shoulders hunched. She took a step back. Marcus felt something dark and hot flare in his chest, something he had not felt in years. Protective anger. He stepped forward, placed himself between Mia and the judgmental stares. His voice came out cold, controlled, the voice that made boardrooms go silent. "She found the baby and came to get me. She did not do anything wrong." The police officer studied Marcus, recognized the expensive coat, the confident posture, the unmistakable presence of someone used to being in control. He made a note in his pad. "And you are?" "Marcus Sterling. I was walking through the park when this young lady alerted me to the situation." Jennifer Walsh was not finished. She stepped closer, her face twisted with disapproval. "This is exactly why children like that should not be wandering around alone. Something like this was bound to happen." Marcus turned his head slowly, fixed her with the look he reserved for incompetent executives. "Unless you are offering help, I suggest you step back and let the professionals do their job." Jennifer's mouth opened, closed. She huffed, grabbed her own child's hand and pulled him away. Marcus did not watch her go. He looked down at Mia instead. She was staring up at him with an expression he could not quite name. Surprise, gratitude, something deeper. For the first time in 37 years, Marcus Sterling felt like he had done something that actually mattered. The paramedic stood up. "We need to transport immediately. Is anyone riding with the baby?" Mia took a step forward. Her voice was small but determined. "I want to go. I do not want him to be alone." The officer gently blocked her path. "Hold on, honey. You cannot ride along unless you have a guardian with you." Mia's face crumpled. She looked around the park, at the strangers watching, at the cold indifference of the city, at a world that had taught her early that help was never guaranteed. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I do not want him to be alone." Those words hit Marcus like a physical blow. They were the words he had screamed silently on this same bench 37 years ago. The plea that no one had answered. Marcus heard his own voice before his brain caught up. "I will go with her. I will go too." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Are you the guardian?" "No," Marcus paused. Then he glanced down at Mia, who looked back with wide, pleading eyes. "But she found me, and I am not letting her go alone." The officer hesitated, looked at Marcus, at Mia, at the situation that did not fit neatly inside any rule book. Sometimes compassion does not fit inside regulations. "All right, sir." The officer nodded. Mia exhaled in relief. She tried to climb into the ambulance, but her little legs could not manage the high step. Marcus reached down without thinking, lifted her gently, set her inside next to the stretcher. She settled into the corner beside the tiny patient. Her eyes never left the baby's face. She leaned close and whispered something so softly that Marcus barely heard it. "I am here. You are not alone now." Marcus climbed in after her. The doors swung shut with a heavy thud that echoed through the cold November air. As the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, Marcus looked at this little girl who had somehow dragged him into the messiest, most complicated situation of his carefully controlled life. He should have walked away, should have stayed in his penthouse tower where emotions could not touch him. But watching Mia whisper comfort to a dying infant, Marcus felt something thaw inside him, something he thought had frozen to death decades ago. For the first time in a very long time, Marcus Sterling felt human. The ambulance hummed steadily as it cut through Philadelphia's rush-hour traffic. Red and blue lights painted the interior in alternating flashes. The paramedic worked quickly, attaching monitors and warming blankets to the tiny patient. Mia sat pressed against the wall, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes were fixed on the baby with an intensity that seemed far beyond her years. Every time his breathing stuttered, she leaned forward slightly. Every time the monitor beeped, she held her breath. Marcus sat across from her, knees angled toward the stretcher. He tried to look anywhere but at the child or the girl. He failed. Outside the windows, the city blurred past. Storefronts, late-night diners, the familiar glow of one of his own shopping centers. Sterling Plaza, 300,000 square feet of retail space, anchor tenants, food court, underground parking. He had passed these streets 1,000 times, always from the comfort of his car or the heights of his office, always separated from the reality below by glass and steel and the insulation that money provides. But riding here in the cold metal belly of an ambulance, beside a lost child and a newborn fighting for breath, it felt like a different world entirely. The paramedic leaned over the baby, listening to his heartbeat through a stethoscope. She murmured updates to the driver through her radio. He is hypothermic but stable, heart rate weak but steady. We are 3 minutes out. Mia's fingers tightened around the hem of her jacket. Her small voice broke the mechanical rhythm of the monitors. Will he be okay? The paramedic gave her a soft, practiced smile. We are doing everything we can, sweetheart. And it was very good that you called for help when you did. Mia looked at Marcus quickly, making sure he heard that, making sure someone acknowledged what she had done. Marcus felt something warm flicker in his chest. Pride that was not his to claim, but he felt it anyway. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. The CFO, the board, the endless demands of an empire that never stopped needing attention. He pulled out the phone, glanced at the screen, 12 missed calls, 23 emails, all marked urgent. None of them mattered. Marcus silenced the phone, put it away. Mia watched him with those old knowing eyes. Your phone keeps ringing. I know. Is it important? Marcus looked at her, then at the baby, then out the window at the city he owned but had never really seen. Not as important as this. Mia seemed to accept that answer. She turned back to the baby, reached out one small hand and touched the edge of his blanket, so gently, like he might break. The ambulance turned sharply, slowing. The hospital driveway appeared through the windows, harsh white lights. The emergency entrance, people in scrubs rushing out with a gurney. When the back doors swung open, a rush of cold air swept in. Mia instinctively curled inward, bracing against it. Marcus placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. She flinched. Not from fear, from surprise, like she was not used to adults reaching out gently. Come on, he said quietly. Let us make sure he gets inside safely. Mia nodded, climbed out carefully. Her worn sneakers touched the pavement. Inside the hospital lobby, warmth hit them instantly. The brightness of fluorescent lights made Mia blink and rub her eyes with her sleeve. Nurses hurried past with clipboards. Machines beeped from down hallways. Somewhere a child cried. The air smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion, and too many bodies in too small a space. Marcus guided Mia toward a row of plastic chairs near the emergency desk. She sat down, pulled a small, battered stuffed bear from her jacket pocket. Its fur was matted. One ear was flattened from years of being held too tight. A soft growling sound came from her stomach. She pressed her arms across it quickly. Embarrassed, Marcus heard it. When was the last time you ate? Mia looked down at her shoes. At school. But that was lunch. She did not add that she had saved half her sandwich, that her mother always said not to waste food, that sometimes lunch at school was the only meal that was guaranteed. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, trying to fit this small, fragile creature into the world he lived in. A world where meals came in catered trays and hunger was something he only heard about in quarterly reports on food insecurity. "Stay here," he said. He stood and walked toward the small hospital cafe. When he returned 10 minutes later, he carried a tray. Steam rose from a cup of soup. A soft roll sat beside it, warm chocolate milk in a carton. Mia's eyes widened like he had brought her treasure. "For me?" Marcus nodded. Set the tray in her lap. "Eat." She hesitated only long enough to whisper a shy thank you. Then she picked up the spoon with both hands. Ate slowly at first, cautious, then faster as the warmth filled her chest and pushed back the cold that had settled into her bones. Marcus watched her from the seat beside her. He could not explain why every bite she took felt like it was stitching something inside him. Something he did not know had torn. Footsteps approached, the squeak of shoes on polished linoleum. A police officer, one of the ones from the park. He had a notebook tucked under his arm. "Sir, we will need a few details from both of you." Mia froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. Her body stiffened the way frightened animals do when a shadow passes overhead. Marcus spoke before the officer could say more. "She did nothing wrong. She is just a child who found a baby." The officer nodded politely, but his eyes lingered on Mia. "We just need to know where her guardian is." Mia's voice came out barely audible. "My mom works. She does not get off until late." The officer wrote something in his notebook. His expression was unreadable. "Where does she work?" "At the Riverside Diner." Mia's voice got even smaller. "In the food court." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Riverside Diner, in Sterling Plaza, in his building. The officer glanced at Marcus, recognized his authority, not just in tone, but in the kind of presence that came from years of being listened to. "I will stay with her until her mother arrives." The officer studied them both, then nodded. "All right, sir." He walked away. Mia finally exhaled, leaned back in her chair, clutched the warm chocolate milk between both hands like a lifeline. Marcus looked at her. This brave little girl who had grabbed his coat and dragged him into a situation he could not control, could not buy his way out of, could not solve with a phone call. A nurse approached, tired but kind. She had news. "The baby is stable. We have him on warming protocols. His temperature is coming up slowly. You brought him in just in time. Another hour and we would have lost him." Mia's whole body relaxed, relief washed over her face. The nurse continued. "We are also trying to identify the mother. The baby had no ID. It does not seem like she ever made it back to the park." Marcus leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "We found something." The nurse hesitated. "Security footage from the park and nearby areas. A young woman was seen placing the basket under the bench around late afternoon. Then she walked toward the back entrance of Sterling Plaza." Marcus's spine went rigid. His building. Again. The nurse pulled out a plastic evidence bag. Inside was an employee ID badge, slightly worn. The photo showed a young woman, mid-20s, dark hair, exhausted eyes. The name read, Sarah Sterling, janitorial staff. Marcus felt the world tilt. The same last name. Sterling. Not common, not impossible, but not coincidental either. The nurse continued. "We found her badge in the maintenance hallway. She is an employee there, a janitorial worker. We are searching the building now." Before Marcus could process this information, the nurse's radio crackled. A voice came through, distorted but urgent. "We found a woman, janitor uniform, unconscious in the staff restroom on level B, breathing shallow. Need paramedics now." Mia gasped, covered her mouth with both small hands. The nurse pressed her radio. "We are on our way." She turned to Marcus and Mia. "She is alive, but she needs immediate care. We will bring her here." Marcus stood. He did not wait to be asked. He followed the nurse down the hallway, his mind racing. Sarah Sterling, same last name, working in his building, unconscious in a staff restroom. The pieces did not fit together yet, but they were starting to form a picture, and Marcus did not like what he was seeing. They brought Sarah Sterling in on a stretcher 20 minutes later. Paramedics wheeled her through the emergency entrance. A nurse jogged beside them, rattling off vitals. Female, mid-20s, severe dehydration, exhaustion, possible malnutrition. She fainted in the employee restroom. No signs of trauma, just complete physical collapse. Marcus stood in the hallway, watching as they rushed her past. He caught a glimpse of her face, younger than he expected, pale, dark hair stuck to her forehead with sweat, the cheap polyester of her janitor uniform still clinging to her thin frame. Something about her face tugged at him, the shape of her jaw, the curve of her cheek, familiar somehow, but he could not place it. The doors to the treatment room swung shut. Marcus found himself standing alone in the corridor, listening to the muffled chaos inside. Mia appeared beside him. She had slipped away from the waiting area. "Come looking." She tugged his coat gently. "Is she going to be okay?" Marcus knelt without thinking. His knees cracked, age catching up no matter how much success tried to hide it. "I do not know, but they are helping her now." Mia looked toward the closed doors, then back at him. "I think she did not mean to leave him. I think she wanted to come back, out of the mouths of children. The kind of wisdom that cuts through complexity and finds truth." Marcus swallowed hard. "You are probably right." They stood there together, man and child, stranger and stranger, connected by something neither of them fully understood yet. A doctor emerged from the treatment room, white coat, stethoscope around her neck. She looked tired but composed. "She is stable, severely dehydrated and exhausted, but she will wake up soon. We will continue monitoring her through the night." "Can we see her?" Marcus heard himself ask. The doctor hesitated. "Are you family?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. He had no answer, but Mia did. "He helped save her baby, and I found him. We are not leaving." The doctor smiled despite herself. "All right, but just for a moment." She led them into the room. Sarah lay still under white sheets. Monitors beeped steadily beside her. An IV drip fed fluids into her arm. Her chest rose and fell in the shallow rhythm of exhausted sleep. Marcus approached the bed slowly, like approaching something fragile, something that might shatter if handled roughly. On the small bedside table sat her belongings, a cloth bag, worn at the seams, a few papers stuck out of it, a cheap plastic water bottle, a pair of work gloves with holes worn through the fingertips. Marcus's eyes landed on a folded paper sticking out of the bag's side pocket. Something nudged him. Curiosity, guilt, the strange pull of recognition he could not explain. He should not touch it, should not invade her privacy. But his hand moved anyway. He gently pulled the paper free. Unfolded it. It was a letter, handwritten. The kind of writing that came from someone who did not get much practice. Uneven letters, some crossed out, some rewritten. The paper was creased from being opened many times. It began with two simple words. "To my brother." Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He read further, each word hitting like a physical blow. "I do not know where you are. I do not even know if you know I exist. But I have been looking for you for 3 years. Mom died last year. Before she passed, she told me about you. She said our father had another child before he left. She said your name was Marcus. She said you were abandoned too. She said you became someone important. I found you, Marcus. It took me 3 years, but I found you. You are the CEO of Sterling Properties." I was so proud and so terrified. How could someone like me approach someone like you? So I got a job cleaning your building. I thought maybe if I worked hard, if I proved myself, I could find the courage to tell you who I was. I watched you from the basement. Every day, you walk past the cleaning crew like we were invisible. I do not blame you. That is how the world works for people like me. But I wanted so badly to call out, to say I am your sister. I never did, because I was ashamed. Ashamed of my uniform, my dirty hands, my poverty. Then I got pregnant, and everything became impossible. They would not let me rest. Every time I asked, Manager Crawford said, "If you cannot handle it, there are hundreds waiting for your job." I tried, Marcus. I tried so hard. I left bottles of milk in the basket. Even when I could not stand anymore, I was thinking of him. I was going to come back. I just needed to rest for a few minutes. But my legs would not listen. "I am sorry I failed. Your sister, Sarah." The letter slipped from Marcus's fingers, fluttered to the floor. Mia tugged his sleeve. "What is wrong?" Marcus could not speak, could not breathe. The words on that letter had rewritten his entire reality in the space of 60 seconds. This woman, this exhausted, broken woman lying in a hospital bed, she was not just an employee, not just a stranger who made a mistake. She was his sister, the sister he never knew existed. The sister who had scrubbed his floors for a year, who had watched him from the shadows, who had been too ashamed of her poverty to speak, who had worked herself to the point of collapse because his managers told her she was replaceable. Marcus looked at Sarah's face again, and suddenly he saw it, the resemblance, the shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw, features that mirrored his own. Family. Mia's voice pulled him back. "Mr. Marcus, what did the letter say?" Marcus knelt down, looked into Mia's eyes. When he spoke, his voice came out rough, scraped raw by emotion he had not allowed himself to feel in decades. This woman, she was looking for her brother. Mia's eyes widened. Her brother? Like family? Marcus nodded once. "Do you know him?" Marcus closed his eyes, opened them. "I think she meant me." Even saying it out loud felt unreal, like speaking a truth that changed the shape of every moment that led to this one. Mia's eyes went impossibly wider. "You? You are her brother!" Marcus swallowed hard. "It looks that way." Then Mia said the thing that made everything else fall into place. "Does that mean the baby is your family too?" Marcus looked at Sarah, at the monitors tracking her heartbeat, at the IV keeping her alive, at the letter on the floor that contained 3 years of searching and hoping and failing to find courage. "Yes," he whispered, "it means he is my nephew." Mia smiled, a small, hopeful smile that carried more warmth than anything else in that cold, bright hospital room. Then he is not alone anymore. Marcus stared at this 5-year-old child who saw the world with such clarity, such simple, devastating truth. And for the first time in 37 years, Marcus Sterling believed her. The baby was not alone. Sarah was not alone. And neither was he. The city spread beneath them like a kingdom of glass and steel. From this height, people were invisible. Cars were toys. Problems were numbers on spreadsheets. Marcus Sterling stood at the head of the mahogany table. 12 executives sat before him, men in tailored suits, women with sharp eyes and sharper ambitions, the people who had helped him build an empire, the people who were about to tell him he had lost his mind. Thomas Whitmore sat at the opposite end. Lead director, 65 years old, silver hair perfectly styled, a man who had spent 4 decades turning companies into profit machines. He cleared his throat. "Marcus, we need to discuss the situation." Marcus knew what was coming. He had known since the moment the news broke, since reporters started calling, since the headlines appeared. Billionaire CEO's sister worked as janitor in his building. The media loved the story. It had everything: wealth, poverty, family drama, the kind of narrative that made people share and comment and judge. The board hated it. Thomas continued. His voice was measured, controlled. The stock dropped 2% when this story went public. "Our shareholders are asking questions, uncomfortable questions." Marcus leaned against the table, his hands flat on the polished wood. "I imagine they are." The CFO spoke up. "Douglas Chen, brilliant with numbers, terrible with people. If we implement the labor policy changes you are proposing, our operational costs will increase $47 million annually." $47 million. That comes directly out of profit margins. Marcus had expected this. He had run the numbers himself. "Yes, it does." Thomas leaned forward. "Marcus, we understand this is personal. Your sister, the baby, it is tragic. But business cannot be run on emotion. We have fiduciary responsibilities. Shareholders expect returns." A woman spoke. Patricia Greenwood, head of legal, elegant, ruthless. "We need to consider liability as well. If we admit the working conditions were problematic, we open ourselves to lawsuits from every employee who ever felt overworked." Marcus looked at each of them in turn. These people were not evil. They were doing exactly what the system taught them to do. Maximize profit, minimize risk, protect the bottom line. He had taught them well. "So your recommendation is what?" Marcus kept his voice level. "We do nothing?" Thomas spread his hands. "We make small adjustments, incremental changes. We form a committee to study working conditions. We release a statement expressing concern. We move carefully. And my sister? Marcus asked quietly. The 63 other employees working 70-hour weeks? What do we tell them? The room went silent. Douglas broke it. With respect, Marcus, your sister chose to take extra shifts. She signed the overtime forms. We have documentation. Did she have a choice? Marcus straightened up. Did any of them? When the choice is work yourself to death or lose your apartment, is that really a choice? Patricia shifted in her seat. We are not a charity. We are a business. Marcus felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. He had heard these arguments before, had made them himself, had believed them with absolute certainty, until he read Sarah's letter, until he saw what those beliefs looked like when they crushed a human being. Thomas stood. Marcus, we are going to call for a vote. The board needs to decide whether to implement these costly reforms or maintain our current policies. Go ahead. The vote was quick. Hands raised. Counted. 9 against the reforms, 3 in favor. Thomas sat back down. The decision is made. We will issue a statement of concern, form a review committee, make modest adjustments over the next fiscal year. That is the responsible approach. Marcus nodded slowly. I see. Thomas relaxed slightly. Good. Now we can focus on damage control and getting our stock price back up. Marcus walked to the window, looked down at the city below. Somewhere down there, Sarah was recovering in a hospital bed. Somewhere down there, Mia Chen was probably sitting in another cold park, waiting for her mother to finish her shift. Somewhere down there, 63 people were working themselves to exhaustion because men in this room had decided profit mattered more than people. He turned back. His voice was calm, final. Then I am giving you my resignation. Effective immediately. The room erupted, voices overlapping, shock and protest and confusion. Thomas stood again. Marcus, do not be hasty. We can discuss this. There is nothing to discuss. Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket, placed it on the table. You made your choice. I am making mine. You will lose everything, Patricia said. Your position, your salary, your reputation. I already lost everything that mattered, Marcus replied. I just did not know it until a 5-year-old girl grabbed my coat in a park. He walked toward the door. Thomas called after him. Marcus, if you resign, we will still block any reforms. You will have given up your position for nothing. Marcus paused at the doorway, looked back at the 12 people who had helped him build $2 billion worth of buildings where invisible people worked in invisible pain. We will see about that. He left. Detective James Morrison was 51 years old. He had worked Philadelphia homicide for 23 years. He had seen the worst of human nature. The violence, the cruelty, the casual indifference that let people die while others walk past. But something about the Sterling case bothered him. Not because a baby was abandoned. That happened, too often. But because of the pattern he was starting to see. He sat across from Marcus in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Sterling Tower. Rain hammered against the windows. The afternoon crowd huddled over laptops and phones. Morrison slid a folder across the table. I did some digging like you asked. You are not going to like what I found. Marcus opened the folder. Inside were personnel files, spreadsheets, work schedules going back 2 years. 63 employees, Morrison said, all working more than 70 hours per week, some pushing 80, 90 in a few cases. Marcus scanned the numbers. His face remained expressionless, but his jaw tightened. Morrison continued. 23 hospitalizations in the past 2 years. Exhaustion, stress-related illness. 1 heart attack. The guy was 34 years old. Who approved these schedules? Morrison pulled out another document. Your operations managers. But they were following directives from higher up. Cost reduction targets, efficiency metrics, all signed off by you. Marcus looked up. Me. You are the CEO. Everything goes through you eventually. The words hit like bullets. Clean, precise, devastating. I never saw these, Marcus said quietly. I saw quarterly reports, profit margins, numbers that kept going up. I never asked how. Morrison leaned back. That is the thing about systems. Nobody thinks they are the bad guy. The managers were just hitting targets. The workers were just trying to survive. You were just running a business. But put it all together and you get Sarah Sterling unconscious on a bathroom floor. Marcus closed the folder. His hands were steady, but his voice was not. How do I fix this? Morrison shrugged. You are asking the wrong guy. I investigate crimes, but if you want my opinion, you burn the whole system down and build something better. The detective stood, dropped a few bills on the table for his coffee. One more thing. I talked to some of the workers, off the record. They are scared to come forward. Scared of retaliation, of losing their jobs, of being marked as troublemakers. How many would testify if they knew they were protected? Morrison considered. Maybe a dozen, if they really believed you would protect them. Set it up, Marcus said. Public hearing, city council chambers. I want everyone to hear what we did. You sure about this? Morrison asked. You are about to make a lot of powerful people very angry. Marcus thought about Sarah, about Mia, about the baby who almost died because nobody stopped to look, I am sure. Marcus sat in Sarah's hospital room. She was awake now, propped up on pillows, still weak but getting stronger. The color had returned to her face. Ethan lay in a bassinet beside her bed. 3 weeks old, tiny but fighting. His skin was pink and healthy now. No more blue tint, no more shallow breathing. Sarah watched Marcus with cautious eyes. You resigned. News travels fast. They are saying you walked away from $2 billion. Marcus looked at his nephew. Money is just numbers on a screen. He is real. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You do not have to do this for me. I am nobody. You are my sister. You did not know I existed a week ago. Marcus met her gaze. And that is my failure, not yours. They sat in silence. The monitors beeped. Ethan made small, sweeping sounds. Finally, Sarah spoke. What happens now? Now I fight. Marcus stood, walked to the window. I am calling for public hearings. I want everyone who suffered under my policies to tell their stories. I want the city to hear what happened. Sarah sat up straighter. Marcus, that will destroy you. The board will come after you, the shareholders, the media. Let them. But why? Sarah's voice broke. Why would you risk everything for people you do not even know? Marcus turned back, looked at her, really looked at her, because 37 years ago I was sitting on a bench in Riverside Park, cold, scared, alone, and nobody stopped. Nobody saw me, nobody cared. He paused, and then Mia stopped. She saw, she cared, and it changed everything. Sarah wiped her eyes. What did the board say when you resigned? They said I was being emotional. Marcus smiled. It was not a happy smile. They were right. For the first time in my adult life, I am being emotional instead of strategic, and it feels right. A knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse poked her head in. Mr. Sterling, there is someone here to see you. A Miss Rosa Chen. Send her in. Rosa entered, small, tired, wearing her waitress uniform from the diner. She looked at Marcus with wary eyes. Then she saw Sarah in the bed and her expression softened. I know you, Rosa said to Sarah. You used to come into the diner, always order just coffee, never ate. Sarah nodded. I could not afford food. Rosa turned to Marcus. Her voice was hard. And I know you too. You signed the paper that fired me 5 years ago. Marcus did not flinch. I did. Rosa crossed her arms. Do you even remember why? I looked it up, Marcus said. You complained about safety violations in the food court, grease traps that were never cleaned, electrical wiring that sparked. You filed 3 reports. Then you were terminated for insubordination. Insubordination. Rosa laughed bitterly. That is what they call it when poor people ask not to die in workplace fires. You were right, Marcus said simply. I was wrong. I am sorry. Rosa stared at him, searching for lies, for manipulation, for the careful corporate speak she had heard before. She found none. Mia says you are trying to change things. I am trying. Why should I believe you? Marcus had no good answer, no clever words, nothing but the truth. Because I have a choice now. Keep pretending I do not see the damage I caused. Or face it, fix it, even if it costs me everything. Rosa studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. There is a public hearing in 3 days. Detective Morrison told me. He says you want workers to testify. I do. I will testify. Rosa's voice was steady. And I will bring others. 8 women who used to work for you, who got fired for speaking up, who have stories that need to be heard. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Rosa turned to leave, then paused at the door. My daughter risked her life to save that baby. She is 5 years old and she has more courage than most grown men. Do not let her down. I will not. Rosa left. Sarah looked at her brother. You know what is going to happen, right? When those women testify, when the media covers it, the board will not just fight you, they will destroy you. Marcus sat back down. Probably. And you are okay with it? Marcus looked at Ethan, at this tiny human who existed because Sarah refused to give up, who survived because Mia refused to walk past. I am more okay with that than living in a tower while people die in my basement. The city council chambers were packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls, cameras set up in the back. This was the kind of story that moved beyond business sections into human interest, into the social consciousness. Marcus sat in the front row, Sarah beside him, too weak to testify, but strong enough to witness. The council president called the hearing to order. We are here to examine labor practices at Sterling Properties and other major employers in Philadelphia. First witness, please. Rosa Chen walked to the microphone. She wore a simple dress. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice did not. My name is Rosa Chen. 5 years ago, I worked in the food court at Sterling Plaza. I was fired for reporting safety violations that could have killed people. She told her story. Simple, direct, devastating. Then came the others. 8 women, each with her own tale of exploitation, of impossible schedules, of threats when they complained, of being worked until their bodies gave out. One woman was 32. She had collapsed from exhaustion while pregnant, lost the baby. Another was 60. She had worked there for 12 years. When she asked for a day off for her husband's funeral, she was written up for unreliability. The stories kept coming, each one landing like a hammer blow. The media ate it up, cameras rolling, reporters taking notes. This was the story everyone wanted. Rich CEO versus struggling workers. David and Goliath. Right and wrong. At the back of the room, Thomas Whitmore sat with the Sterling Properties legal team. His face was a mask of controlled fury. When the testimonies ended, the council president spoke. Mr. Sterling, would you like to respond? Marcus stood, walked to the microphone. Everything you heard today is true. Every single word. Marcus's voice carried through the chamber. These women worked for companies I own, under policies I approved. I am responsible for their suffering. The room went silent. I built Sterling Properties on the principle of efficiency. I believed that business success required hard choices, tough decisions. I was wrong. He paused, let the words sink in. Efficiency that crushes human beings is not success. It is slavery dressed up in corporate language. And I participated in it, profited from it, while people like Sarah Sterling scrubbed my floors and I never even saw her face. Thomas stood abruptly. This is a publicity stunt. Mr. Sterling is no longer with the company. He does not speak for Sterling Properties. Marcus turned to face him. You are right. I do not speak for Sterling Properties anymore. I speak for myself. And I am saying that I failed these women. I failed my sister. I failed every person who trusted that working hard would be enough. What do you want? The council president asked. Legislation. Marcus looked at the council members. Mandatory 40-hour weeks unless overtime is truly voluntary and paid at double rate. Mandatory health benefits for all employees, mandatory rest periods. Surprise inspections with real penalties for violations. That will destroy businesses, Thomas shouted. It is economically impossible. I ran the numbers, Marcus said calmly. It reduces profit margins by an average of 8%. Companies will still be profitable, just less obscenely so. The council president nodded. We will take your recommendations under advisement. This hearing is adjourned. As people filed out, reporters swarmed Marcus. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. Mr. Sterling, is it true you resigned over this? Yes. Do you regret building your fortune on worker exploitation? Every day, what is next for you? Making things right, whatever that takes. The backlash was immediate and brutal. By the next morning, 17 major shareholders had called for an emergency meeting. The stock was in free fall, down 15%. Analysts were calling it the Sterling collapse. Lawrence Pemberton led the charge, 74 years old. Old money, old power. He had helped finance Marcus's first building 20 years ago. Now he wanted blood. The emergency shareholder meeting was held in the same boardroom where Marcus had resigned. But this time he was not invited. Pemberton stood at the head of the table. Gentlemen, ladies, we have a crisis. Marcus Sterling has declared war on profitable business. He is using his personal drama to destroy shareholder value. Thomas nodded. The hearing was a disaster. Every competitor is using this against us. Clients are threatening to walk. We are facing lawsuits from workers emboldened by his statements. What do we do? Someone asked. We remove him completely, Pemberton said. Not just from the CEO position, from the board, from any association with Sterling Properties. We erase him. Can we do that? Patricia Greenwood asked. We own 60% of voting shares combined, Pemberton replied. We can do whatever we want. The vote was swift. 8 in favor of complete removal, 4 abstaining, none opposed. Pemberton smiled. It was the smile of a shark. Now we issue a statement. Sterling Properties categorically denies all allegations of systemic worker abuse. Marcus Sterling was a rogue actor who has been removed. We have launched an internal investigation that will surely find minimal issues. And the reforms he proposed? Pemberton waved a hand, ignored. Business continues as usual. Marcus received the notice of his complete removal at 8 in the morning. He was sitting in Sarah's hospital room. Ethan was having his morning feeding. The scene was peaceful, domestic. Everything his life had never been. His phone buzzed, an email from Sterling Properties Legal Department. Formal, cold, notifying him that he had been removed from all positions, all boards, all committees, effective immediately. He had 48 hours to clear out his personal items from the building. After that, his access cards would be deactivated. Sarah saw his face. What is it? They voted me out. Completely. Oh, Marcus, Sarah's voice was soft. I am so sorry. Do not be. He set down the phone. This is actually perfect. Perfect? How is this perfect? Because now I have nothing left to lose. He made 3 phone calls. The first was to his financial advisor. Transfer $500 million from my personal accounts into the Sterling Foundation. Make it irrevocable. I want it protected from any legal action. Sir, that is most of your liquid assets. I know. Do it. The second call was to his lawyer. Set up a $40 million trust fund for Ethan Sterling. Sarah Sterling is the trustee. I want it bulletproof. Mr. Sterling, are you sure? Never been more sure of anything. The third call was to Detective Morrison. I need you to set up a press conference outside Sterling Tower tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. What are you planning? Morrison heard the tone in Marcus's voice. The quiet fury of a man who had finally found something worth fighting for. Burning it down, Marcus said. All of it. It was raining. Of course it was raining. Marcus stood on the steps of Sterling Tower, the building he had designed, the building that bore his name, the building that had made him rich while people suffered in its basement. 50 reporters gathered under umbrellas, camera crews, photographers, the whole media circus. Sarah stood beside him, holding Ethan, still weak but determined to be there. Mia was there too, standing with Rosa, the little girl who started everything by refusing to walk past a cry for help. Marcus stepped to the microphone. My name is Marcus Sterling. 3 days ago, the board of Sterling Properties voted to remove me completely from the company I built. They did this because I asked them to treat workers like human beings instead of expendable resources. Camera shutters clicked. Reporters scribbled notes. I want to make something very clear. I am not the victim here. I am the architect of a system that crushed people. I approved the policies. I set the targets. I looked the other way when workers were hospitalized from exhaustion. He paused. Let them hear the truth. This is my sister, Sarah. She worked in my building for a year, scrubbed my floors, cleaned my toilets. I never knew she existed because I never bothered to look. She worked herself to the point of collapse because my managers told her she was replaceable. Sarah held Ethan up slightly, showing the cameras. This is Ethan. My nephew. He almost died because Sarah had no choice but to leave him in a park while she worked a shift. She was too exhausted to survive. The rain fell harder. Marcus did not care. The board of Sterling Properties says business cannot be run on compassion. That profit must come first. That workers should be grateful for whatever wages we choose to give them. His voice grew harder, colder. I am here to say they are wrong, and I am going to prove it. He pulled out a document, held it up. I have transferred $500 million of my personal wealth into a new foundation, the Sterling Worker Justice Foundation. We will provide legal defense for any worker fighting exploitation. We will offer interest-free loans to workers starting their own cooperatives. We will fund legislation to protect labor rights. Gasps from the reporters. Furthermore, I am starting a new company, Sterling Fair Labor Properties. We will build affordable housing. We will operate under strict labor standards, 40-hour weeks, living wages, profit sharing with workers. And we will prove that you can build a successful business while treating people with dignity. Thomas Whitmore pushed through the crowd. Marcus, this is insane. You are destroying everything you build. Marcus looked at him. No, Thomas, I am finally building something that matters. He turned back to the cameras. I am calling on every worker in America who has been exploited, who has been told they are worthless, who has been worked to the point of breaking. Come forward, tell your stories. We will listen. We will fight for you. And to the corporations that profit from human suffering, your time is ending. Change voluntarily or be changed by force of law. The press conference ended. The footage went viral within an hour. #StandWithSterling trended worldwide. Workers across America began sharing their stories. The floodgates opened, and in boardrooms across the country, executives began to panic. Because Marcus Sterling had just declared war. Not with weapons, not with violins, but with something far more dangerous. The truth. 24 hours later, Sterling Properties stock had crashed 20%. 3 major clients canceled contracts. The city of Philadelphia threatened to revoke business licenses if labor violations were found. Protests erupted outside Sterling buildings in 4 cities. Thomas Whitmore sat in his office at 11 p.m., alone, staring at financial projections that looked like a death spiral. His phone rang. Lawrence Pemberton, we need to fix this now. How? Thomas asked. Marcus has the media. He has public sympathy. We look like monsters. Then we stop being monsters. Pemberton's voice was hard. Call an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning and say what? That we made a mistake, that we are bringing Marcus back on his terms. Thomas felt his stomach drop. You cannot be serious. I'm completely serious. Pemberton's tone shifted. I have been in business for 50 years. I know when to fight and when to fold. This is a fold. If we keep fighting Marcus, we lose everything. If we give him what he wants, we lose some profit but survive. The board will never agree. The board will do what I tell them. I control 40% of the shares. You get the other votes in line, or I will replace you too. The call ended. The next morning, 12 exhausted executives gathered in the boardroom. Thomas stood at the head of the table. We are voting to reinstate Marcus Sterling as CEO, with full authority to implement his proposed reforms. The room erupted in protests. Thomas raised his voice. We have no choice. The stock is in free fall. Clients are leaving. The media has made us the villains of the decade. We either adapt or we die. This is surrender, someone said. This is survival. The vote was called. 8 in favor, 2 opposed, 2 abstained. Thomas picked up his phone, dialed Marcus. Marcus answered on the second ring. What do you want, Thomas? The board wants you back. Full reinstatement, full authority, your reforms, all of them. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Under what conditions? Your conditions. All worker protection policies implemented within 90 days. No retaliation against anyone who testified. 20% of profits go to worker benefits. 3 worker representatives added to the board. Thomas heard his own voice saying things he never thought he would say. Giving away power, giving away profit, giving away control. And one more thing, Marcus said. Richard Crawford stays, but he reports to a new chief people officer. Someone whose only job is worker welfare. Agreed. Then I accept. When can you start? I never stopped. Marcus hung up. He looked at Sarah, at Ethan, at the future he had almost destroyed. Then he looked at Mia, the 5-year-old girl who had grabbed his coat and changed the world. She smiled at him, a smile that said she knew he would do the right thing, that she had believed in him even when he did not believe in himself. Marcus smiled back. Tomorrow the hard work would begin, restructuring a company, changing a culture, fighting against every instinct the business world had taught him. But tonight he sat with his family, his sister, his nephew, his unlikely allies. And for the first time in 37 years, Marcus Sterling felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The building looked the same from the outside, 47 stories of glass and steel, the Sterling name still carved into the granite above the entrance. The lobby still gleamed with polished marble and expensive art, but inside everything had changed. Marcus stood in what used to be a storage room on the second floor. It was not a storage room anymore. Now it was a childcare center. Bright colors on the walls, soft carpet, toys and books and tiny tables. 20 children played under the supervision of 3 trained caregivers. One of those children was Ethan, 7 months old now, healthy, thriving. He sat in a play area, stacking blocks with the intense concentration only babies can achieve. Sarah stood beside Marcus. She wore business casual clothes now, not a janitor uniform. She worked part-time for the Sterling Foundation, studying social work online, building a future. She watched her son play and smiled. 6 months ago, I thought I had lost everything. Marcus looked at her. 6 months ago, I thought I had everything. We were both wrong. A woman approached, young, professional, clipboard in hand. She was the new director of the childcare center. Mr. Sterling, we have a waiting list of 43 employees. We need to expand to the 3rd floor as well. Do it, Marcus said. Whatever you need. She nodded and walked away. Sarah turned to her brother. How much is this costing? The childcare centers? Marcus did the math in his head. Across all 47 properties, about $12 million a year. And the company is still profitable? More profitable than before. Sarah looked surprised. How is that possible? Marcus gestured toward the window. Look down there. What do you see? Sarah looked. The lunch rush, people coming and going, workers on break. Nothing unusual. Now tell me what is different from 6 months ago. Sarah studied the scene more carefully. Then she saw it. The people moved differently, not rushed, not hunched with exhaustion. They talked to each other. Some even laughed. They look happy, she said. Exactly. Marcus leaned against the window. Happy workers are productive workers. When people are not exhausted, they make fewer mistakes. When they feel valued, they care about quality. When they have childcare and healthcare, they miss fewer days. So treating people well is actually good business. Revolutionary concept, Marcus smiled. It only took me 42 years to figure it out. They stood there together, brother and sister, 2 people who had spent their lives invisible to each other, now building something new. Sarah touched his arm. Thank you for everything. Marcus shook his head. I should be thanking you. You showed me what I had become, what I was doing to people. I did not mean to, I know. But sometimes the truth comes from unexpected places. Like 5-year-old girls in parks. Exactly like that. The reforms had not been easy. Marcus knew they would not be. Changing a culture required more than policy memos and good intentions. Some managers quit rather than adapt. Good riddance. They went to competitors who still operated on the old model. Let them. Some workers were suspicious at first, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for management to take it all back. But slowly, steadily, trust began to build. The 40-hour work week was enforced. Anyone working overtime had to be explicitly approved and paid double rate. The requests dropped dramatically. Healthcare was extended to every employee, not just management. The janitors, the food court workers, the security guards, everyone. Profit sharing was implemented. 20% of quarterly profits divided among all employees based on hours worked. The first checks went out 3 months ago. Some workers cried when they saw the amounts. And the childcare centers. Those were Marcus's pride. He had personally overseen the conversion of unused space in every building, hired the best directors, bought the best equipment, because he kept thinking about Sarah, about the impossible choice she faced: work and abandon your child, or stay home and lose everything. No one should have to make that choice, but the changes had cost him. The board fought him constantly. Every reform was a battle. Every policy shift required negotiation and compromise. His personal wealth had dropped from 1.2 billion to 300 million. The foundation, the trust fund for Ethan, the startup cost for the new Fair Labor Company. He did not care. 300 million was still more money than any person needed, and what he had gained was worth more than any fortune. Richard Crawford sat in his new office. It was smaller than his old one. No window, just a desk and a computer and a wall full of worker safety regulations. His new title was Chief Compliance Officer. His new job was to ensure that no worker was ever exploited again. It was the hardest job he had ever had. He reviewed a report from the Detroit property. One manager had asked an employee to work a sixth consecutive day. The employee had agreed, but that did not matter. Policy was policy. Richard picked up the phone, called the manager. "Steve, I am looking at your staffing report. You had Maria Rodriguez work 6 days straight." The manager's voice was defensive. She volunteered. "We were short-staffed. Then you hire more people. You do not burn out the ones you have. But the labor budget is tight this quarter. Then you come in under budget. What you do not do is violate policy. This is your warning. Next time, you are terminated." Richard hung up. He hated this, hated being the enforcer, hated confronting people who were doing exactly what he used to do. But he owed this to Sarah, to Marcus, to his own daughter who he wanted to grow up in a better world. A knock at the door. Marcus entered. "How is it going?" Marcus asked. Richard gestured at his computer. 53 policy violations this month, down from 91 last month. Progress. Marcus sat down. "You know, you could have left. Gone to a competitor. Made more money." Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "6 months ago, I was at home. My daughter asked me what I did at work. I realized I could not tell her the truth. Could not say I pushed people until they broke. Could not say I valued profit over human beings." He looked at Marcus. "I want to be able to answer that question now. I want to tell her I make sure people are treated fairly, even if it is harder, even if it pays less." Marcus nodded. "Your daughter is lucky." "No," Richard shook his head. "I am lucky. You gave me a chance to be better. Not many people get that." "We all get that chance," Marcus said. "Most of us just do not take it." Rosa Chen stood in her new restaurant. Not a diner, not a food court station, a real restaurant, small, only 20 tables. But it was hers. The sign outside read Rosa's Kitchen, simple, honest, like everything Rosa did. Marcus had helped her get the loan, below market interest rate through the Sterling Foundation. But Rosa insisted on paying every penny back. This was not charity. This was investment. The restaurant had been open for 3 months. It was already profitable. Word of mouth brought customers. The food was good. The prices were fair. And everyone knew the story. The woman who had been fired for speaking up, who had testified against corporate abuse, who had taught her daughter to be brave. People wanted to support that story. Mia sat at a corner table, doing her homework. First grade now, reading and writing and learning math. She wore new clothes, not expensive, but new. Her jacket fit properly. Her shoes were not worn through. She looked up when Marcus entered. "Mr. Marcus." She still called him that, even though he told her she could just use his first name. But Mia had her own sense of formality. Marcus sat down beside her. "What are you working on?" "Writing. We have to write about someone we admire." "Who did you choose?" Mia showed him the paper. It was titled My Mom. Marcus read it. The handwriting was careful. The spelling mostly correct. The sentiment absolutely pure. "My mom is the bravest person I know. She works very hard. She always helps people, even when it is hard. She taught me to be brave too. One time I found a baby and I was scared, but I remembered what my mom said. You help people even when you are small. So I helped. And now the baby's okay. I want to be like my mom when I grow up." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "This is beautiful, Mia." She smiled. "It is true." Rosa came over, wiping her hands on her apron. She had been cooking. The lunch rush was over, but dinner prep was starting. She saw Marcus reading Mia's paper. "Oh no, she is going to embarrass me." "You should be proud," Marcus said. Rosa sat down, looked at her daughter with eyes full of love and exhaustion and fierce determination. "I am proud, every single day." Marcus pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I have something for you," Rosa frowned. "If this is more money, I already told you no. It is not money. It is an invitation." "To what?" "You will see." 2 weeks later, Marcus stood at a podium in City Hall. The room was packed. Media, workers, city officials, the same crowd that had witnessed his confession 6 months ago. But the mood was different now. Less hostile, more curious. The council president introduced him. "Mr. Sterling has asked to address the council regarding labor reform progress." "Mr. Sterling." Marcus stepped to the microphone. "6 months ago, I stood before you and admitted that I had built a fortune on worker exploitation. I promised to change. Today, I want to report on that progress." He clicked a remote. A presentation appeared on the screen behind him. Sterling Properties now operates under the following standards: mandatory 40-hour work weeks, double pay for any overtime, full health care for all employees regardless of position, on-site childcare at every property, profit sharing with all workers, and worker representation on the board of directors. Click. Next slide. Statistics. Employee turnover has dropped from 63% to 11%. Productivity is up 18%. Customer satisfaction scores are up 22%. And our profit margins, while lower than before, are still healthy at 12%. Murmurs through the crowd. This proves what I have been saying. Treating workers fairly is not just morally right. It is economically sound. Happy workers build better businesses. He paused. But Sterling Properties is just one company. The real change needs to happen citywide, statewide, nationally. Click. Next slide. That is why I am announcing the Sterling Model Initiative. We are making all of our policies public, free. Any company can adopt them. We are providing consulting at cost to help businesses transition. And we are lobbying for legislation to make basic worker protections mandatory. The crowd was silent, listening. Furthermore, the Sterling Foundation is committing $100 million over the next 5 years to support this initiative. Legal defense for exploited workers, loans for worker cooperatives, funding for pro-labor political candidates. He looked directly at the cameras. To every CEO watching this, you have a choice. Lead the change or be changed by it. The era of treating workers as disposable is ending. Be on the right side of history. The room erupted in applause. Not everyone was clapping. Some business leaders sat stone-faced. Some walked out. But enough people were clapping. Enough people believed. Change was possible. The first board meeting with worker representatives was tense. 3 new faces sat at the table. Maria Rodriguez, 28, single mother, worked in janitorial services. Carmen Lee, 46, food court manager. Robert Washington, 53, security supervisor. They looked uncomfortable, out of place, surrounded by executives in expensive suits while they wore their work uniforms. Thomas Whitmore called the meeting to order. His tone was professional but cold. He had never forgiven Marcus for the changes, but he had learned to live with them. First item on the agenda, quarterly financial review. The CFO presented. Revenue up 6%, costs up 8% due to new labor policies. Net profit down 2% from last year. Thomas looked at the worker representatives. Any questions? Maria raised her hand tentatively. Yes. Where do the cost increases come from specifically? The CFO pulled up a breakdown. Healthcare costs are the largest increase, followed by childcare operations, then profit-sharing distributions. Maria nodded. And you said productivity is up 18%. Does that not offset the costs? It offsets some, not all, but customer satisfaction is up too. Does that not lead to more business? In theory. We are still tracking long-term impacts. Marcus leaned forward. What Maria is asking is whether treating workers well actually costs us money or makes us money in the long run. The CFO hesitated. Early data suggests it makes us money, but it is too soon to be certain. Carmen spoke up. Her voice was stronger than Maria's, more confident. I manage the food court at the Philadelphia property. Since we implemented the new policies, my turnover dropped from 80% to 15%. Do you know how much it costs to constantly train new workers? The CFO looked at his notes. Approximately $8,000 per employee when you factor in training time, mistakes during learning curve, and HR processing. So if I used to lose 40 workers a year and now I only lose 8, that saves the company how much? The CFO did the math. $256,000 per location. And we have how many food courts? 31. Carmen leaned back. So that is almost $8 million saved just from lower turnover in food courts alone. Seems like the policies are paying for themselves. The room went quiet. Thomas cleared his throat. Point taken. Next agenda item. After the meeting, Marcus caught up with the 3 worker representatives in the hallway. That was impressive in there. Maria shrugged. We know the business. We just never got to speak before. Keep speaking, Marcus said. That is why you are here. Robert Washington spoke for the first time. His voice was deep, measured. Mr. Sterling, I have worked security for 20 years, for a lot of companies. This is the first time I have ever seen management actually care whether workers live or die. Marcus met his eyes. I wish I could say I always cared, but I learned. Better late than never. Robert nodded slowly. My grandfather used to say, it is not where you start that matters. It is where you end up. Marcus hoped he was right. The Sterling model began to spread. First, it was small businesses, coffee shops, local retailers. They saw the publicity, saw the success, decided to try it. Then medium-sized companies, regional chains, property management firms. They adopted parts of the model, tested, adjusted, found it worked. Then the big players began to notice. A major hotel chain announced they were implementing Sterling-style policies in all locations. A national restaurant group followed, then a tech company, then a manufacturer. Not all of them. Most corporations still clung to the old ways, but enough changed to matter. And in Congress, legislation was introduced. The Worker Protection Act, based largely on the Sterling model, mandatory overtime pay, healthcare requirements, childcare support. It faced fierce opposition. Business lobbies fought it. Conservative politicians called it socialism. The battle would take years, but the conversation had changed. Workers were no longer invisible. Marcus watched the news coverage from his office. Sarah sat beside him. Ethan played on the floor with his blocks. Do you think the legislation will pass? Sarah asked. Eventually. Marcus turned off the television. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but the momentum is building, change is coming. Sarah smiled. You sound optimistic. That is new for you. I am learning. From who? From a 5-year-old girl who taught me that one person can make a difference. 1 year after Marcus found Ethan dying on a bench, the city held a dedication ceremony. Riverside Park had been renamed. It was now Hope Park. The old stone bench where so much had changed remained. But now it was a memorial. A bronze plaque had been mounted on the bench. The inscription read, "In memory of the lost ones. May we never walk past a cry for help. In honor of Mia Chen, who showed us that courage has no age." November 15th, 2025. The ceremony was held on a Saturday afternoon, sunny, unseasonably warm for November. Hundreds of people gathered. City officials, community members, former Sterling Properties employees, people whose lives had been touched by the story in ways large and small. Marcus stood at the podium, Sarah beside him, holding Ethan. The boy was 1 year old now, walking, talking, thriving. Mia stood on Marcus's other side, wearing a new dress. Her mother had bought it special for the occasion. The girl looked solemn, like she understood the importance of the moment. The mayor spoke first. A year ago, tragedy was averted in this park because one child refused to look away. Today we honor that courage and commit ourselves to building a city where no child is abandoned, where no worker is invisible, where compassion is not weakness, but strength. Applause rippled through the crowd. Then it was Marcus's turn. He stepped to the microphone, looked out at the faces, so many faces, all of them here because of what happened on this bench. This bench has two stories, he began. His voice carried across the park. 37 years ago, I was abandoned here. I was 5 years old, alone, scared. No one stopped. No one helped. I learned that day that the world was cold and indifferent. He paused. Let them absorb that. 1 year ago, my nephew was left on this same bench. History repeating. Another abandoned child. Another cold November evening. But this time, someone stopped. He looked down at Mia, this girl, 5 years old, just like I was, but braver than I ever was. She saw a baby who needed help, and instead of walking past, instead of assuming someone else would handle it, she acted. Mia looked up at him. Her eyes were wide, but she did not look away. She grabbed the coat of a stranger. Marcus smiled. Me, a man who had spent decades building walls, who had convinced himself that caring about others was weakness, who had forgotten what it meant to be human. And she dragged me back to humanity. His voice broke slightly. He cleared his throat, continued. This bench is no longer just a symbol of abandonment. It is also a symbol of rescue, of hope, of the extraordinary courage that lives in ordinary people. He stepped back from the microphone. The crowd stood and applauded. Then Mia stepped forward. She had asked to speak. Marcus had been surprised, but he said yes. Someone had to lower the microphone. Mia stood on her tiptoes even so. She looked out at the crowd. So many people, more than she had ever seen looking at her. But she was not scared. Her voice was small but steady. I am Mia. I am 6 years old now. I found the baby who lives there. She pointed at Ethan in Sarah's arms. I did not know I was doing something big. I just did not want him to be cold and alone. My mom says when people need help, you help them. Even if you are small, even if you are scared. She paused. The park was silent. Everyone listening to this tiny girl with the huge heart. Now the baby is okay. And his mom is okay. And Mr. Marcus is okay too. She looked up at Marcus. He was sad before, but now he smiles sometimes. Laughter rippled through the crowd. I think maybe we are all sad sometimes, Mia continued. Grown-ups too, but we do not have to be alone. We can help each other. She looked at the bench, at the plaque. This bench is not scary anymore. It is a good place now, because good things can happen even in scary places. She stepped back, did not wait for applause, just returned to stand beside her mother. The crowd rose. Not polite applause, a standing ovation for a 6-year-old girl who had changed the world simply by caring. Marcus lifted Mia onto his shoulders. She laughed, surprised and delighted. The cameras captured it. The image would be everywhere by evening. The billionaire and the little girl. The CEO who learned compassion from a child. But in that moment, Marcus was not thinking about images or publicity. He was thinking about the weight on his shoulders, the trust, the responsibility. This girl had saved him. Now he would spend the rest of his life trying to deserve it. After the speeches, city workers removed a tarp from something near the bench. Underneath was a statue, bronze, life-sized. It showed a little girl holding the hand of a baby. The girl was looking down at the child with an expression of fierce protectiveness. The baby was looking up at her with trust. The sculptor had captured something essential. The way the vulnerable protect each other. The way courage does not require sheaths or strength, just heart. A plaque at the base read, "The Protector." Mia stared at the statue. That is me. Yes, it is, Marcus said. I look brave. You are brave. Mia considered this. Then she turned to Sarah. Can I hold Ethan? Sarah smiled. Of course. She carefully transferred the 1-year-old into Mia's arms. The girl sat on the bench, the real bench, cradled Ethan with the same fierce gentleness the statue showed. Someone took a picture, the girl and the baby she saved. 1 year later, both thriving. Rosa stood beside Marcus, watching her daughter. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For giving her a future. For showing her that speaking up matters, that courage is rewarded, that the world can change. Marcus shook his head. She taught me that, not the other way around. Maybe you taught each other. They stood in comfortable silence. Two people from completely different worlds, brought together by tragedy, united by hope. The ceremony continued. The mayor announced a new community center opening in the park. free childcare, job training, counseling services, all funded by the Sterling Foundation. Sterling Properties was donating land for affordable housing, 200 units, rent-controlled, for workers and families who had been priced out of the city, and a scholarship fund, the Mia Chen Courage Scholarship, for children who demonstrated extraordinary compassion. Full ride to any college in Pennsylvania. Mia would be the first recipient when she graduated high school 12 years from now. The sun began to set. Golden light painted the park. The crowds slowly dispersed. Families returning to their lives. Politicians to their offices. Media to their studios. But Marcus stayed. Sarah, Rosa, Mia, Ethan, Detective Morrison, who had become a friend, Catherine Reed, the lawyer, a dozen others who had been part of the journey. They sat in the park as evening came, talking, laughing, telling stories. This was the real memorial, not the statue or the plaque, but the people, the connections, the community built from crisis. Marcus looked around at these faces. His family, not by blood, well, Sarah and Ethan by blood, but the rest by choice, by shared struggle, by the bonds forged in fire. This was wealth. This was success, and it had nothing to do with money. Marcus stood in his office. It was smaller than his old one. He had moved Sterling Properties headquarters to a more modest building, sold the tower, used the proceeds for the foundation. He did not miss the height. The view was better from ground level. His assistant knocked. "You have a delivery. Personal, send it in." She returned with an envelope, handwritten address, postmarked from Oregon. Marcus opened it. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photograph showed a woman, maybe 60, gray hair, lined face, but sober eyes, clear eyes. She stood in front of a small house with a garden. Marcus looked at the letter. His hands trembled slightly. "Dear Marcus, you do not know me, but I know you. I am Patricia Sterling, your birth mother. I saw the news coverage of what you have done, the reforms, the foundation, the little girl who saved your nephew. I watched all of it, cried through most of it. I want you to know I have been sober for 12 years. I live in a recovery community in Oregon. I work with other addicted mothers, trying to help them so their children do not suffer like you did. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. What I did to you was unforgivable. I left you on that bench and I walked away. The drugs mattered more than you did. That is the truth, and I will carry that shame until I die. But I wanted you to know something. Every day for 37 years I have thought about you, wondered where you were, what you became, if you survived, if you hated me. Seeing you on television, seeing the man you became, it broke my heart and healed it at the same time. You survived, you thrived, and more than that, you became someone who helps others survive. I am so proud of you. I have no right to be proud, but I am. I am not asking to be part of your life. I am not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry, that I was sick, but that does not excuse what I did, that you deserve better, that you deserved a mother who loved you more than her addiction. You built a beautiful life from the ashes I left you in. That is your victory, not mine. If you ever want to contact me, my address is below. If you do not, I understand. Either way, thank you for surviving. Thank you for becoming someone who makes the world better. Your mother, Patricia. Marcus set down the letter, stared out the window. Sarah entered without knocking. She could do that now. They were family. She saw his face. What is wrong? He handed her the letter. She read it, looked up at him with concern. Are you okay? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. I spent my whole life angry at her, hating her, using that anger as fuel to succeed, to prove I did not need anyone. And now I do not know what I feel. He turned to face Sarah. Part of me is still angry. Part of me understands addiction is a disease. Part of me wants to reach out. Part of me wants to throw the letter away. What are you going to do? Marcus looked at the address, Oregon, a 6-hour flight. I am going to think about it. He folded the letter carefully, put it in his desk drawer, and maybe someday I will be ready to forgive, but not today. Sarah hugged him. That is okay. Healing takes time. Marcus hugged her back. thought about how much had changed in 2 years, how the sister he never knew existed was now the person he trusted most, how the nephew he almost lost was the center of his world, how a little girl with a big heart had taught him what really mattered. Family was not about blood. It was about choice, about commitment, about showing up. He had a family now, one he had built from broken pieces, and that was enough. The ritual continued, every Friday. But now Marcus was not alone. He walked through Hope Park with Sarah. Ethan ran ahead, 2 years old now, fast and fearless, chasing pigeons and laughing. Mia was there too, 8 years old, doing homework on the bench. Her mother's restaurant was thriving. Mia had her college fund, her future was bright, but she still liked to sit on the bench. The place where her story began. Marcus sat beside her. What are you working on? Math, Mia made a face. It is hard. You will figure it out. You always do. Mia smiled. Then she looked at Ethan. Playing on the grass, so full of life. He does not remember, does he? Being cold, being alone? No, Marcus watched his nephew. He was too young. It is better that way. Mia nodded thoughtfully. But we remember, so we make sure it never happens again. Out of the mouths of children. Still teaching him after all this time. Other families arrived. This had become a tradition. Hope Park Family Night. Every Friday, the community gathered. Former employees, current workers, families from the affordable housing, people whose lives had been touched by the changes. There was Richard Crawford with his wife and daughter. He waved. Marcus waved back. There was Detective Morrison with his wife, retired now, but still part of the family. There was Carmen and Maria and Robert, the worker representatives. They brought food. Someone always brought food. Rosa arrived with containers from her restaurant. She set up a picnic on the grass. People gathered around. This was community. This was family. This was everything Marcus had missed while building at his empire of glass and steel. The sun began to set, golden hour, the same light that had illuminated that terrible November evening 2 years ago. But now it felt warm instead of cold. Marcus looked around at the faces, laughing, talking, connecting. He thought about his birth mother's letter, still in his desk drawer, still waiting for a response. Maybe someday he would be ready to reach out, to offer forgiveness, to close that circle. But not yet. He had this family first, the one he had chosen, the one that had chosen him. Sarah sat beside him, put her head on his shoulder. Ethan climbed into his lap. Sticky hands, grass stains on his pants. Perfect. Mia looked up from her homework. Mr. Marcus? Yes. Are you happy? Marcus looked at her. This child who had grabbed his coat and saved his life, who had taught him that courage could come in small packages. That compassion was not weakness, but the greatest strength. Yes, Mia, I am happy. Good. She smiled, then went back to her math. The light faded slowly. The park began to glow with street lights. No one left. They stayed, talking, eating, being together. Marcus closed his eyes, listened to the sounds. Children laughing, adults talking, the rustle of leaves, the hum of the city. This was home. Not the penthouse, not the office, this park, this bench, this community built from tragedy. 37 years ago, he had been abandoned here. 5 years old, alone, convinced the world was cold and cruel. 2 years ago, he had returned. 42 years old, still alone. Still convinced emotions were weakness. Now he was 44, surrounded by family. Finally understanding what mattered. The bench was no longer a symbol of abandonment. It was a symbol of hope, of second chances, of the extraordinary power of one small act of courage. Marcus opened his eyes, looked at the bronze statue, the little girl protecting the baby. Eternal, unchanging, a reminder. We are never too lost to be found, never too broken to heal, never too far gone to change. All it takes is someone brave enough to stop, to see, to care. Someone like Mia. The night grew darker. The families began to pack up, heading home, to warm houses and full refrigerators and futures that looked brighter than they had any right to be. Marcus helped clean up. Sarah gathered Ethan. Rosa packed her containers. Mia put away her homework. They walked out of the park together, toward the parking lot, toward their cars, toward their lives. As they reached the edge of the park, Mia stopped, turned back, looked at the bench one last time. "Goodbye, bench," she whispered. Marcus knelt beside her. "Why are you saying goodbye?" Mia smiled. "I'm not really. I am saying thank you." "For what? For being where I needed you to be? For having the baby there so I could find him? For starting everything?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. He put his hand on Mia's shoulder. "The bench did not start everything," he said softly. "You did, by choosing to stop, to help, to be brave." Mia thought about this. Then she looked up at him. "We all started it together, me and you and the bench and the baby and everyone." "You are right," Marcus stood. "Let us go home." They walked to the cars, got in, drove away into the Philadelphia night. Behind them, the park grew quiet. The statue stood watch. The plaque gleamed in the streetlight. "May we never walk past a cry for help." And somewhere in the darkness, the bench waited, ready for the next story, the next miracle. The next reminder that courage can come from anywhere, even from a 5-year-old girl with a worn jacket and a heart bigger than the world. What started as one man's quest for redemption has become a national movement. The Sterling model of worker protection has now been adopted by 247 companies across America, affecting over 500,000 workers. Marcus Sterling, former CEO of Sterling Properties, continues to advocate for federal legislation. The Worker Protection Act, based on his reforms, will be voted on in Congress next month. When asked about his legacy, Sterling said simply, "I am not the hero of this story. That honor belongs to a 6-year-old girl who taught me that we are all responsible for each other." Mia Chen, now 8, continues to attend school in Philadelphia and volunteers at Hope Park Community Center every weekend. The bench where it all began remains a symbol of hope in a city learning to see its invisible citizens. And the story continues.